back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. This hour we're going to be talking to Suzanne Northrop about creating connections to the dead. But later on we'll be having this week's Mind Yoga question to stretch your mind and open you up to new information. Excuse me, so let me tell you a little bit about Suzanne and then get her on the line. Suzanne Northrop is a nationally recognized trance medium and an expert in psychic phenomena. For the past 30 years, she has bridged the gap between the world of the living and the spirit world. Suzanne has authored a medium's cookbook, Recipes for the Soul, Second Chance, Healing Messages from the Afterlife, Everything Happens for a Reason, and the Seance, Healing Messages from Beyond, the Seance. And that's her website, theseance.com. Now, I have to tell you, I turned her mic on, but I have to tell everybody that's listening, I was on Suzanne's show a couple of weeks ago, and she is a hoot, and I'm so excited to have her on. Hi, Suzanne. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I am great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I had so much fun on your show the other day.
That's great. Well, yes, it was a great show. We definitely had a lot of fun.
Well, I have to tell you, and you know, I'm from upstate New York myself. So anyway, I just thought I would put that out there. You know, which is that
we talked about that actually. Connection. We talked about that on the show in relationship to some of your first, house experiences.
Oh, that's right. That's
right.
Yeah,
some of your ghost house experiences.
That's right.
Yeah, and then when you went to school and then you came, where you stayed in the place, I guess one of the dorm places or something to that effect.
But actually, that was college. I'm from Kingston, which is kind of close to Elmira.
Oh, so, very close.
Very close.
Well, actually, it's about 4 hours away, because Kingston is more in the eastern part of the state, and Elmira is more in the mid of the state. There's a whole other part of the state that people don't know about.
You mean it's not just one giant city?
Yeah, really. People I know. Didn't you find that was true? People thought that New York was just this big city.
Mm-hmm. Everywhere.
There's a whole part of the state. This is actually very, rural and farmland and lakes and all that stuff.
Mhm. It's a beautiful state, except it had snow, so that's why I don't live there anymore.
Right, that's why you don't. I hear you.
I have to tell you, I read your book, and I have to tell you, and it just endeared me to you even more, how in your book, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, how you refer to, and I'm going to say this in the nice way, people that have crossed over, where instead of saying, they passed on or whatever, you call them dead people, DPs for short.
Right, DPs, Dead People Society, exactly.
And I just love that to death. So it's my new thing. It's like, I have all kinds of other names, but I just don't blatantly just call them dead people. Not too often.
Right. Well, there's actually a story behind that, if you want to hear the story behind it.
Oh, well then, yeah, go ahead.
The story behind it is that, I've been doing what I've been doing for a very, very long time. And there was a period, I think, in I want to say like maybe late 70s, early 80s, where, quote-unquote, channeling became like the big thing, like the Ramtha people and Lazarus, who actually still does a lot of work. So people would come up to me and they would say to me, do you do channeling? And I go, well, no, I talk to dead people. And although, technically the process is very similar, except for when people, the whole coined expression of channeling were people that were, channeling information from like a Ramtha or like Lazarus, and, they were acting as, channelers. They didn't really deal with dead people. So, when like I said, it became a very big thing during that time, and so when people just kept asking me that question, and then finally one day I said, you know what? I'm going to create my own little organization called the Dead People Society. So then we will know the difference between talking to dead people and channeling what we call the Ramthas and the Lazaruses. So that's how that came about.
Or channeling dead people.
Or channeling dead people. Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the actual process of channeling or trance work or being a medium is actually, it is essentially being an in-between. It's just that the process is a little bit different of who you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, as you know, I do intuitive work, and I have people that periodically will want me to do medium work, and I tell them, that's not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
I make no guarantees. It's like, I'll try, sometimes it works, sometimes not so much. It's not my thing.
Right.
But it's your thing.
It is my thing.
It is definitely your thing. Question, so what do you think about shows like Medium or Ghost Whisperer? They have definitely opened up, The Sixth Sense, the movie. It really has opened up people to the concept of mediumship. But what do you think about those shows, the accuracy from a personal, professional perspective?
Well, I actually have stories about that too. But before I tell you, one sort of like quick story, and I know that Hollywood takes a lot of license. I mean, they have to, because it's got to be dramatic. It's got to be, it's got to, keep people on the edge of their seats. It's got to do all that stuff. So, they take a lot of license. And in that, what happens is that it's presented in a way which is, it's a little truthful. I mean, I wouldn't go to the big stretch. I mean, I think if every single person had to go, and talk to Jennifer Love Hewitt before they died, or to make their transition, then we'd be in really big trouble. Okay, so that's of course the portrayal of what that TV show is really about. I would say probably the closest thing of the accuracy is that a lot of my work does have to do often with people that are unresolved, or they want to connect to that person who's passed, from if they happen to have a fast passing or a free passing or any of the above. And, that does happen, but that's about the connection for the process of helping people through, making the connections afterwards. I've actually only seen the show once, so I can't really tell you all the specifics about it, but I do know that it's really done in a way where the person dies and then she has to, have them go on. Now, interesting enough, that work is actually called rescue medium work, where the souls have, and it happens, and it doesn't happen as much as people thinks it does, but I always tell people where the places in the country where there's actually more quote-unquote ghosts, because that's what you're talking about when you're talking about with rescue work, is in the South during the Civil War, because you had a lot of young boys that were, thought they were still alive after being dead and hiding from, quote-unquote, from the enemy. And so there were a lot of rescue mediums that had helped them in the process of the transition to move on. So that's kind of like what the show reveals. It's just that I just don't think it's to the extent that, of course, it's weekly portrayed in her show. So that's kind of the thing. That's my feeling about her show. Now, the medium, which into itself is also a little interesting, is this. The clever thing about the show is, and I don't know how much, again, I haven't seen it very much, so I can't tell you if they continue to do it, but if you watched it from the beginning, do you remember when she was connected to the university and dealing with the university? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that really did happen, because I was one of those people that was part of those first studies at the University of Arizona. And so, literally, that happened in 1999. It was an HBO special called Life After Life. And that's what there was 5 of us mediums, and we were, that I know, to my knowledge, it was the only time where we actually were all tested to kind of prove what we call survival of consciousness after death. So that was used in relationship to the show, because she lived in the Tucson area, Allison Dubois, and actually had something to do later on with the doctor at the university. But really more what she really does than medium work is actually she's really works much more like a psychic working on police cases, because medium grabs people, because people love mediums. That's how they named it the show. And so it's really more of a crossover, but there are a lot of mediums that don't do that kind of work. And there's some wonderful psychics that do phenomenal work with working with the police in solving crimes. So it's really kind of, Again, they use the medium because people love the mediums, and part of it is, relayed on that level of the show. But actually, she works really much more as a psychic than a medium.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
and especially being like
trivia.
a psychic detective thing.
Right, that's exactly right. And but like I said, if you've watched the show, that's what she's dealing with the police, and she's dealing on some of these these cases. And like I said, a lot of mediums don't do that work. That's work that's done much more by psychics that work in the arena of solving those kind of cases.
Yeah. Ooh. I am so empathic that I just climb right in the victim's body, the few that I've kind of played around with, and it's like, just what I want to experience, you dying. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Not a fun energy.
No, not a fun energy. No, definitely not a fun energy. So, and I have as well have done some police work in my career. I don't like it. Don't do a lot of it. Usually get brought in by the family because the family are the ones that are still left in the grief or the unresolvement of the situation. And the police have, of course, they're overwhelmed with all the cases that they have. That the only time that that one generally of my area that doesn't work specifically with the case with police on cases gets brought in by family members. So
one of the things that they go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I just said it's not my area. As you would say, mediumship is not your area. That's not really my area. I've done it, but I'm not crazy about doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite area either. One of the things that they portray in the shows, and, not being a medium, so I feel like I'm talking to, like, the mega expert here, is that these people just show up. It's like, hey, I'm washing the dishes, and some guy you don't even know just shows up and decides to have a conversation with you. Do you have that kind of experience, or do you have to more, there's obviously, you're in session, you're doing a gallery or whatever, and you're in that place that you're opening yourself up to receiving that information. But is it a common thing that, that just in your regular daily life that people would show up?
No. Again, that's where a lot of license is taken. First of all, quite honestly, there is what's called a boundary program. And in that boundary program, one doesn't enter the boundary program, quote unquote, without permission. When I am working, when I am, asked to do what I do, whether it be a venue of a gallery or a seminar or, in relationship to my television show, at that point, I'm acting in that place where I am there to receive information. That door is opened and allowed at that time. If I think at the beginning of my work, when I was first starting my practice, it was tough because I had to work very much on those boundaries and keep those things closed when I walked down the street or sat in the restaurant and stuff. And it was something you had to really work at so that you weren't, open all the time, because you can't. It's like you can be, what I call connected to God all the time, but you can't have your wires up all the time because you would go absolutely nuts. So there really is a protocol where it's only when you're actually in that, what I call that physical space, that that it happens. But I told you again, that's the license of Hollywood, thinking that at any time. And it's interesting because that is a question I am often asked. Do they bother you all the time when you walk down the street? And I go, no. I've learned to, I keep my doors closed and my windows closed and my shields closed and all that other stuff when I'm not working. That doesn't mean I don't pick up things, because you do, because you can't, as you would say, be empath, you can't do it and not have it happen. But it is definitely something that you work, very consciously of, where you're not, doing that all the time.
I know. I read auras, and people do you see people's auras all the time? Could you just imagine seeing these little, glow people with different colors walking down the street all day?
Right, exactly.
It would make clothes shopping impossible.
Exactly. It definitely affects your clothes shopping. And you would go madder than you already are, as they would say, the Madder Hatter, whenever. But no, there's a protocol and there's a boundary. But like I said, Hollywood takes a lot of license, and I think if people can watch the show for quote unquote for entertainment value, and if they can watch the show and be a little educated on the fact that we don't die and that people do have these abilities to open up these doors, I'm going to say great. But what often does happen is that people do take it at face value, and I know that sounds really crazy, and they think that that's really the way it is, and we all know that it's not the way it is. So,
well, it was on TV; it should be true,
right?
And I think when I was on your show, we talked about like the ghost hunting shows and stuff, where there's a ghost around every corner, which is so not true.
Right. Exactly. And also the definition of really what a ghost is, and how it is a ghost is a dead person, but not really technically a dead person, because a ghost is somebody that either consciously has chosen to be in what we call ghost land or astral land, or they are trapped by some traumatic situation in their life. But it is not quite as common as people think. And we also know that what people sometimes think are ghosts are energies, because energies, don't die. There's a continuum. So you can, as you well know, go into a house and have had somebody, been there, 300 years ago, and that energy can still be very prevalent.
Exactly. Since you brought up the people that have not, that are stuck in the ghost land, when you're doing your work, is it more common to connect with people? Well, maybe that's not the right way to phrase it. I mean, because people are looking to connect with their loved ones. And so do you contact or connect with equally, and I think you'll get where I'm going, people that have died, gone into the light, done their little life review, and then they're coming back to visit to make that communication? Or is it more people that are kind of hanging out in that ghostly realm?
No, I don't deal in the ghost realm. That's not my area. I don't do rescue work as a medium. There are mediums that do it. I don't. I deal with people that are dead, know they're dead, gone through that process. Because my work as a medium, the purpose of my work is to connect with the living from those that have passed over, passing on that information.
Okay, well, that brings up a really interesting question then. So let's say I want to talk to my grandma who's dead, and I'm assuming that she's in heaven or wherever grandma is supposed to be going, and, you do your thing or whatever.
Right.
But what if she's, like, dead but in that ghostly place? She wouldn't come through? She
wouldn't be, because, I don't go to that. I deal with people that have actually gone through the physical death process, and they know they're no longer in the body. And, remember that, we're talking about, and the specifics of it is that, there's really not a heaven, there's really not a hell. It's a state of being or a state of consciousness. So that person that has gone through what we call the physical death process, in their consciousness, they know they've gone through that process. And they also know that because the biggest, the most significant force in life, we all know, is love, that there's a continuum of that. And, that's really essentially the purpose of my work is about making that connection of love. You don't stop loving them because they become dead people, nor do they stop loving you. So I kind of act as a bridge, for lack of a better words, and making that connection. And so I don't deal in the rescue medium work.
Right.
I don't, never have, never been my interest. Like I said, there are people who do that stuff, but
you're like me.
Like you, right, exactly. You could be hired for that kind of a job, not me.
Well, and it wasn't like
right.
I planned on doing that at all. It just kind of ended up being that way.
It. Right. Well, we all do what we're, ultimately meant to do, and drawn into the areas of where our expertise are.
Exactly. Let's shift our focus to your new book. Is it a new book? Has it been around a while? I wasn't quite sure.
The Medium Cookbook?
The Medium's Cookbook.
Yeah, the Medium Cookbook came out about 2 years ago. I think it came out in 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. It's my last book.
So we'll just say your book, The Medium's Cookbook.
Yes. Medium's Cookbook, Recipes for the Soul.
And I thought it was very interesting how you actually wrote this book kind of like a cookbook. And why did you decide on that kind of a format?
Well, I'll tell you, I had a very, very good reason for that because all of a sudden it hit me that my next book I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to do an educational book, but I also wanted to do a book where I would have these people, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, that would come up to me after my events, and they would say to me, "Oh, wow, I would do anything if I could connect with my mom again or my son again," and and that kept like reeling in my head, and I kept thinking about, no one has ever really written a step-by-step way of actually the way that happens, and actually not only that it happens, but how we can actually validate our experience when it does happen to us personally. And I kept seeing all these moms and dads and brothers and sisters, and then I thought, you know what, that has never been done, and I felt like it was really important. How it came to be a cookbook, which is of course very interesting since I don't cook, is that when I was going through the process of thinking about the way it could happen, I was actually sitting around the kitchen with a friend of mine, and she said, "Well, why don't you do a cookbook?" And I go, "Do a cookbook? I don't cook." But she said, "Yeah, but what you're talking about is what people do in cookbooks. They take recipes and they take ingredients." And even people who don't cook know that there's a process of cooking. You could take things from the pantry. You can take things from, that this doesn't mix with that and that doesn't mix with this. And so creating the cookbook was really a perfect way of creating all the different ways that connections actually happen. And it became, I thought, actually quite a brilliant idea on how to really break it down to a language that anybody could do and understand and validate their experiences.
And that is one thing that I know.
And I actually teach, when I do my workshops at Omega, I do a weekend intensive. I'm doing it in September this year, and that's what I do. I do the whole weekend intensive workshop based on the cookbook.
And one of the things about the book was that it was very readable, for any skill level. I mean, I got stuff out of it that because it's not my area. And I just think it's fascinating that there's not any books about mediumship, or a how-to kind of thing, because there are so many people that are interested in that
Yes.
area of work.
Yeah. I was surprised, too. Like I said, I never knew one to exist, and I thought, well, you know what? There are certainly a lot of books now written by mediums, but nobody was putting this kind of a book out, and I thought, you know what? This really needs to be done. And that's how it came about. It's a very special book. My biggest seller has always been Everything Happens for a Reason consistently. It's been translated in 5 different languages, and it's also an audio book. But the cookbook, it's interesting. The cookbook draws certain people to its attention. It's I'm sure you know this. You're always sometimes I am anyway fascinated by how like some people are just really drawn to one book and how others are really drawn to another book. But I find that people that are drawn to the cookbook, they're not only searching, but they're really ready to take those extra steps, because you kind of have to want to take those extra steps to, really, really seriously, you of course can read the cookbook, but its intent is to actually, I would say become the explorer and take those next steps.
Mhm. And I don't know if we shared this piece of my story, but, I used to read, waiting till I become psychic, not knowing that I had been psychic my whole life, like really psychic, but I just thought that was how you had the experience. And one of the things that I think everyone will glean from your book is that it's not just a reading thing, it's a doing thing. Practicing and opening yourself up to spirit or psychic phenomena or whatever it's a doing thing. It's an experiencing thing.
Absolutely.
Not just a reading thing.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I in all my years of my practice and teaching as well, is the hands-on is the best way I've always felt to really do that. I mean, to have that happen to you. You really, really need to actually be proactive and be in some kind of, I believe, either workshop situation or, with somebody who's down to, that can guide you in the areas of really doing it. There's nothing takes the place of really doing something.
Mm-hmm. Especially in this kind of work.
Especially in this kind of work. Yeah, in most things, but certainly in this, because otherwise, how are you going to have the options to learn how to grasp doing it?
Mhm. Okay. I had a question, and then somebody just posted something in big letters in the chat room, and it's just like, it just drew my attention away, so let me just kind of pull myself back. There are a lot of people who believe that when spirit communicates with us, that there is this ongoing, like, blah, 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 like you're talking on the phone to somebody, dialogue. Is that true? And
No.
if that's not true, then how does spirit communicate with us?
Well, I think first of all, it's in a whole different variety of ways. It's going to happen to whom of us, and in all certain ways. Some people are visual, some people are audio, some people are. I think everybody's clairsentient to a certain extent. It depends on what your particular personal skills are. And people that are very visual generally have very vivid dreams. And those dreams could be precognitive, or those dreams could be literal, or they could be symbolic. It's up to you to sort of, quote unquote, figure out how that is for you. This is really no different. You'll find that, everybody, like I said, again, receives something in a certain way. I'll give you a wonderful example. This was years and years and years ago. But when I would do my intuitive development classes so we did, I think it was psychometry that we were actually doing. So we were going around the room, and I came to this guy, and he was holding somebody's watch, and because that's what you do in psychometry, you hold an object that belongs to somebody else, and you feel what you can get from that person or about that person. And so he was holding this watch, and I said to him, what did you get? And he goes, oh, I didn't get anything. I says, don't tell me you didn't get anything, because anytime we touch anything in life, we feel something. Hot, cold, close, distant, whatever it is, we always feel something. And he goes, oh, no, I really didn't get anything. And then, he proceeded to go on, and he said, well, I really didn't want to be here tonight. My wife dragged me anyway. He said, I really wanted to be, home watching baseball. He said, okay, so I'll tell you what I feel. I feel Mets. Mets. I just feel Mets. Obviously, he was a Mets fan. And so, I said, okay, that's fine. If that's what you get, and that's what you pick up, then that's what you get. So, I went around the room, and I said, who does this object belong to? And it, belonged to a gentleman on the other side of the room. And I said, okay, does this mean anything to you? And he goes, well, my name is Howard Metz. And that, to me, it epitomizes a perfect example, because intellectually he thought he was thinking about baseball game because he really didn't want to be there, right? And he happened to be a Mets fan, when in fact he was actually picking up the name of the person's item that he held. So my point is that we get into these logic centers, where we think we're receiving this information, logically, and it doesn't make any sense. And I say you have to get past that, because it's not a logic. First of all, you're not hitting the logic part of your brain when you're doing this. You're hitting the intuitive side of your brain. The right side of your brain is the brain that is quote unquote active during this.
Suzanne, there's the music, which means we need to go take a quick break. So I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Suzanne Northrop about her book, A Medium's Cookbook, Recipes for the Soul. Her website is theseance.com, and we'll be back with our mind yoga question after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationship, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
Hi, I'm James Alpayanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. Listen to Dr. Rita's Soul Healer Moment live each third Sunday night of the month on Feet to the Fire. www.feet2fire.com for more information.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rita Louise, the host of Just Energy Radio and the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics. Start a new career today on the leading edge of alternative health and healing. The Institute of Applied Energetics can help you develop the specialized skills you need to work as an energy medicine practitioner, intuitive counselor, or professional medical intuitive. Besides our outstanding technical instruction, our programs also support you in creating and building a successful business in this rapidly growing field. Be a catalyst for changing the way healthcare is done around the world. Contact the Institute of Applied Energetics right away or visit appliedenergeticsinstitute.com.
How would you like to live long and enjoy great health? How about creating solid bones and whiter teeth? Strengthen your heart and eyes and have radiant, youthful-looking skin. There is an ancient health and longevity secret that has been used for millennia in Egypt, India, and China that can help you achieve this. For the first time in the modern world, Pearlsium brings this ancient wellness secret to you. For more information about Pearlsium, visit www.productsforthesoul.com.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and before we bring Suzanne back on, we're going to do our mind yoga question for the day. And so this week, the person will win a copy of The Magician's Way by William Whitecloud. And so to enter, all you need to do is send an email to justenergyradio@yahoo.com. You don't have to even know the right answer. Well, you have to know the right answer to win the book. But everyone that enters wins a chance to, or has a chance to win a free psychic reading from the students at the Institute of Applied Energetics. So here's this week's question. This king of the Old Testament consulted with a medium to get insights from the other side. I'll read it again. This king of the Old Testament consulted with a medium to get insights from the other side. And again, if you know the answer, if you think you know the answer, if you maybe think you know the answer, if you're not quite so sure of the answer, send it to justenergyradio@yahoo.com. And I do want to let you know, if you're listening to this show, within reason of the original air date, I did have a winner last week who actually listened to the archive, sent in the answer, and he was the winner. So there are possibilities that you don't have to only listen live. You can listen to the archive show, get the question, and win. Anyway, let me get Suzanne back on the line, and we're going to continue on, if I push the right button, with our conversation. Suzanne, where did my paper go? Too many papers on my desk. So one question that I like to ask people that, do intuitive work is, how do you process information? I mean, for myself, I'm a clairvoyant and extremely kinesthetic, kind of auditory, I channel, but I try not to admit that in public. But I'm not like an official channel. It just kind of slides in there. You know how that does.
Mm-hmm.
How do you process information? What are your primary ways that you bring spirit through?
Well, it happens for me in a lot of different arenas, but I would have to say that primarily I'm an audient clairmedium. So, I hear, and, my background was actually was music, so it makes an awful lot of sense why that would be the area that would be, a higher skill to me. So what will happen is that I will hear, often, more than often, I hear names. As I hear somebody's name, I'll be drawn to either one part of the room if I'm working with a group, or obviously if I'm working on a one-on-one, whomever whatever name I get is obviously going to be connected to that person or somebody that's connected to them. If I hear the name, it doesn't always have to be, I tell people, a dead person. It can be a living person because, remember that dead people are connected to living people, and they're going to help me identify as any ways possible. As I will often hear the name, and that's sort of like what I call the key to opening up the door, then I will continue to hear, additional information connected to that person. Maybe how they passed, who they're connected to, other specific type things that you would obviously know that it was them. If I don't hear a name, then often I will get what I call the sense of a relationship. Like when I talk about people being on the same level or peers, if I'm picking up somebody, it could be a brother, it could be a male friend like a brother, it could be a cousin, it could be a brother-in-law, it could even be, a husband. I will see them all like on the same level. I see them like a tree. And so obviously people that are above you are older, people that are on the same level are what I call peers, and obviously people that are below are younger. So those are just sort of like some of the simple things that of how I receive information. But primarily I hear it. I mean I quite literally hear it, and I literally hear it with my left ear, which sounds strange, cool. But that's how I know it's coming in my left ear, which makes sense because it's coming from my other part of my brain. So we all know that the right side of the brain is the intuitive.
Well, see, and that's interesting because spirit, like my guides always talk in my right ear, and I can't talk on the phone on my right ear. I mean, I could, but it's not.
See, it's the same way with me. I don't talk on the phone. I only on my left. That's it. And the same way with me. I can't talk on the phone with my other ear either. So I'm
psychic people. We're just weird bunch.
Yeah, we're just filled with all different things going on. But yes, so that's kind of like how it works for me. If I feel something in my body, like I quite literally, somebody that's passed from a heart attack feels different from somebody that passed from, let's say, lung cancer. They both have impact to my chest, but one, literally, I will feel breathing affected, and the other one I feel like more of a boom, like a flat, like, being hit in the chest. Mm-hmm. Same way, it's the same way if I know somebody that has had an accident and it happens to have been in their head, I will feel, the impact in the head. I can generally tell if somebody it passes fast or somebody's had a long-term illness. They feel very distinctly different.
See, that one I cannot figure out personally. So, but maybe I'll have to come to your class because, whatchamacallit in New York?
Omega?
Heart moment. Omega.
Yes, that's where I do my workshop. Yeah.
Oh, down the street, but it's like 20 minutes from my parents. So.
Yes.
Then go.
Yeah. Well, that's where that's why I'm doing my workshop in September. So, and also, I literally will feel. I feel generally male vibration on my left, female vibration on my right. And if I'm speaking with a gentleman and I feel something on my right side, it's generally through his wife or girlfriend or something like that.
How cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, when you do something so long and, they've done it as long as I've done it, there is sort of a system. I know that there are some people who work often with symbolisms. I don't generally hear things symbolically. I generally hear things quite literally. So, again, it's just really, like anything else, it's like fine-tuning your art,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and if people ask me kind of a similar question about the medical intuition stuff, I mean, I have my own little process, my own little system, and this is how but I've never had someone that does your kind of work actually share this level of, breakdown, which is kind of fascinating to me. Never would have, like the left-right thing. That's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Cool stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely cool stuff. It's definitely cool stuff. And that's the way it comes for me, and that's why I always say you can't, you can never, let somebody else know the way it's going to come for them. That's why you have to yourself do it And that's how you will learn in your own process of developing how your skills work for you. And, and in the cookbook, I say, when you go through certain exercises and you do certain things, you're going to feel it in a certain way.
Well, let's start talking about some of the stuff, a little more out of the cookbook, even though this has all been so fascinating. So let's say I wanted to connect with some dead people. I just love saying that. I try to be like a little politically correct on the show. But since you use dead people in your book, I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Oh, no.
With some dead people.
Right. No, don't feel bad about it at all.
What should I do to prepare for a session?
I don't, I tell people they don't really have to do anything. Just, try to come in with an open mind. That's always helpful. And I always encourage people to tape it, write it down, because as you well know, people will go completely brain dead. They will forget the names of their mothers, fathers. Maybe they want to forget the names of, of old lovers in their life. But we forget when we're in that state. And as much as sometimes somebody prepares for it, when they're actually, given information and say, oh no, and then later on that they go and they check it out and they find out, oh wow, that was so and so and that was so and so. So mostly, I think it's just really mostly being open and understanding this is not a computer printout and the way things come a certain way. I don't have any control of who comes through, although 90% of the people that, most people want to connect to do show up, but I still technically don't have control of who shows up or the way they show up or how much information that one particular person will say. Because generally there's never just one person that shows up. There's generally always more than one.
Can you make requests?
You can. People do make requests.
Does it work? I know people do make requests, but does it work, making a request?
Well, I would say that most people that have somebody in mind that they want to connect with, 90% of the time it happens.
Okay.
So, like I said, there's free will to this whole kind of program here. And that's why I said that's when we talked about the boundaries earlier. There's a free will in this boundary program.
Mhm. People that are trying to connect with dead people, what would you say? I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I guess, let me say it this way. I guess a lot of people believe that they can't do it or it's really hard to do or whatever. Mm-hmm. In your experience, because you've been teaching these classes for, a long time, what would you say the percentage of people that just really can't do it, won't ever get anything, you might as well just turn in the book are? I know one person.
Right.
I know one person.
Right. I think probably it's much lower than you would think. When I work with people or I lecture and I start saying this happened after somebody passed or that happened, and then all of a sudden the bells go off and it's like, oh wow, that's what happened when my mom passed. And yes, I did get a message. I did see her in a dream. I did smell her. I did feel her. When I'm driving down the road and I'm thinking about her and I'm very emotional, I'm behind this car. My God, it's a license plate with my mother's name. So, once we are aware or we can embrace it, for lack of better words, that we have been contacted because, I tell people quite literally the dead people's job is to let you know any way that they possibly can because they love you and they know you're a mess, and their job is to contact you to let you know any way that they can to help you in your process because they love you. It's real simple. So if you can keep that in your mind, and, contact does commonly happen right after a passing or within the first year. That doesn't mean it won't happen 5 years from now. I'm just saying that the strongest time seems to be right after the passing or within the first year, or holidays, birthdays, deaths, all of those, prime times, you'll also very often feel them around. But you have to know that it is their job to connect with you. And if they can't get through to you, they'll get to somebody else in the family or somebody who's close to you. And, and that's why when people will say to me, I know this is the craziest thing, but, I got this, I had this visitation, and it's crazy, but I had this visitation from, I know it was your mom. And, obviously they came to her because she could handle it. She wasn't emotional. And, of course, then you decide if you want to pass it on to the person or not. Most people do.
When you do, traditional psychic work, I mean, a lot of people will ask me, they want to become psychic because they want that booming voice to come down and say, don't go to work on Thursday because, such and such and such is going to happen, and they want to have this guidance that in advance, and they don't realize how subtle the information comes through.
Yes.
But when you're reading somebody else, in my experience, it's much easier to read somebody else than it is to read yourself because you're kind of caught up in your own stuff.
That's
when
absolutely
doing
true.
medium work, is it the same way?
Yes, it is. I mean, I don't get any extras because of what I do. That's for sure. But I do know when I'm getting them because of what I do. So, I think that's a very important aspect of, the listening stuff. Very important.
And I guess I'm asking because let's say I'm interested in developing my mediumship and my girlfriend's interested in developing her mediumship. Would it be easier for us to, read each other or, try to bring through each other's family as opposed to trying to do it for ourselves?
Well, I think when you do a situation where you work for somebody else, that's the whole purpose of workshop, is because it takes the onus off you. And I think that's a very important factor. But I also do believe that, we certainly have the option to open up that door for ourselves. Whether we have the option to open up that door professionally, then I think that's a whole other ballpark.
Okay. Flip my paper over. I always take notes. Don't laugh. I read through the book. I always have these little pieces of paper that I take notes on, and this was one of my notes, and I'm trying to figure out what I was. So as we follow the steps in your recipes, that's the note.
Right.
That's not even a question. But that's not even a question. It's just half a question.
Right.
For people, I think where they get really concerned is that they have a hard time telling the difference between their, I'm going to say, hopeful imagination and an actually dead person.
Yes.
Do you have any guidance or advice for those people?
Trust. Because that's the most significant question that I'm asked over and over again. You just got to trust it. There's no magic wand for that one. It's just a trust situation, completely trust situation.
And there's not, I'm such into body level feeling, but there's not any feeling or anything that would give you even a better indicator that what you're getting is real versus.
I think there's a knowing that takes place. And I think once that happens, that you no longer question.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. Okay, and this is always one of my little pet questions. So what if the person that shows up is actually somebody masquerading as your grandmother?
No.
Can that happen? Does that happen?
Doesn't happen. No.
Oh, good.
Doesn't happen.
So there's not any, I know, people that work with, they want to call in their guides, they want to call in angels, and there is the ongoing commentary that, you might call in Archangel Michael, but that might not be who shows up.
You always, anytime you're doing anything in relationship to this, you always say always with God's permission only, period. You only have God's permission. You can only be here in permission by God, as God's granted. No one else is allowed. You make that very clear distinction.
Okay.
And then you eliminate all those issues.
Well, I mean, I'm just glad that people just can't just show up. That would be bad.
Well, they have no reason to. Unless you've invited them, unless you've done stuff like, playing with a Ouija board, something like that. When you do stuff like that, then you really open yourself up for big trouble. Because you have no control who shows up. That's the difference.
Okay, and I guess maybe that's kind of where I wanted to go. And so doing this work and the things that you suggest in your book aren't really putting you in that kind of position that you're just opening yourself up to any stray person that might go by.
That's correct. No, you're not.
Okay, I think that's really important because it can and does happen, as you well know.
Yeah, very important.
So any other pieces of advice, any tips that you would like to give the listeners as far as what they can do, some first steps that they can take to start opening themselves up more to communicating with
well, coming back again, I think the one thing that is very, very important is that, to know that your loved ones, they want to connect with you. It is not only want to, but they do it because they love you. And if you can be, and I know after passing people are often in a lot of grief, that's a difficult thing at that moment for them because, that's the last thing that they can handle because they're just, kind of staying above board dealing with the loss. But if they can tell them, whomever has passed and say, listen, I'm a mess, I may cry, but I need you to give me some kind of a message that you're around. And be open to whatever that may be. Like I said, it could be, number one way is dreams. That's the most common way that contact happens. But there's a whole other variety of things, electrical things, lights going off and on, phones ringing, picking up, no one's there. Like I said, the smelling, the sensing, and all of that. Those are the things that you can actually, embrace and say, this is what did happen after my mom passed. And the more that you understand how it works for you, then the more you'll know the way you're going to be contacted, or communicated to, or given messages. In any case, it's all the same.
Well, and there are so many people that will make comments like, I thought my mother had come into my room, the day after she passed.
Yep.
And I'll look at them and go, no, it wasn't your imagination. Your mom was there.
That's correct.
And they just always seem so shocked.
Yes, absolutely. And why wouldn't she be there? Because she's your mom and she still loves you. That didn't change. And,
so I have to share
you with that.
I have to share this with you because you would get it, and you don't really do this kind of work. But, I've gone into a number of, funeral homes doing investigations with my ghost hunting group stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know what you see in those places half the time? You see the dead person hanging around, and this is just like a residual imprint. They're hanging around looking at the service and seeing who shows up.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And it's like, God. and is it a big party? And, what are they serving? And I had one guy, he had a drug and alcohol issue. There wasn't enough booze, which at the party they decided it was an alcohol-free event, and he wasn't too happy about that part.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought it was hysterical that they get into this whole big thing. People are thinking, oh, they're on the other side. They're all confused. It's like, no, they're checking out who's
they're
where
checking out
what.
Who's there. You got it. They're absolutely doing that, without a question. Without a question.
So I've been saying so forever. This book's been out for a couple of years, a medium's cookbook. What other books can you kind of go over? We have about 2 more minutes left, and I want to give you a chance to kind of talk about your books, talk about your intensive that you have coming up, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I always suggest to people to go to my webpage because I travel a lot, and they'll see, if I'm coming to their neck of the woods. I'm going to be, I'm doing an event in Albany, New York this week coming up. I'm going to be in Philadelphia. I'm going to be in Baltimore next month. I'm going to be in Connecticut next month. I'm going to be in Denver in July and Albuquerque in July. And all these places I'll be doing, gallery events of sorts. And I'm as well usually available for either small groups or privates while I'm traveling. And and I also tell people that I have a free newsletter that comes out monthly, and then I have, updates throughout the month of where, people have these questions they want answered, and they email them in, and I answer them. So, and it's free. You can just go to my webpage and you just sign up for it. And if you sign up for that, then you'll also get, you'll get the newsletter, and we'll let you know where I'm going to be. And so if I happen to be in your area and you want to connect, then, I'll be there.
Do you ever come to Dallas? Nobody ever comes to Dallas.
That's not true. Actually, I'll tell you something. I've had some of my biggest successful events in Dallas. I did, is it Good Morning Texas? What's that television show? Yes.
Good Day Dallas.
Good Day Dallas, right. I did the show twice, and then, of course, they changed, they got bought up by Clear Channel, and they changed the people, and they didn't want mediums on there anymore. But I did the show a couple of times when I was down there. And I had, two or three huge events in that area. So I beg to differ. Actually, people in Texas happen to love mediums.
Well, no, they love mediums, but I'm just saying, but we don't. I mean, it's interesting. A lot of people will go through different cities, and there's not that many times that someone of your caliber comes through Dallas.
Yeah.
I'll just say it that way.
Well,
and you're so cool. And if you ever come to Dallas, you so have to send me an email and let me know, because I would love to hook up with you.
Okay, that would be great. That would absolutely be great. And I will definitely keep it on my list, because I happen to, I've my few times that I've been there, I've worked in Austin, I've worked in Houston, and I have worked in Dallas. I've done events in all those different places. I haven't been in the last couple of years, but I love it in that area. Generally, when one does, events, depending on the size and the magnitude of the events, you usually need to do, media to promote them and things of that sort. But I will tell you, the media in Dallas is tough, because there's definitely a lot of born-agains that run the media stations, as you probably well know.
Yes, I know all about that. Suzanne, thank you for coming on the show. I just love you. You're just so fun.
Rita. Thank you. And we'll continue this conversation. How's that sound?
That sounds great. And I'm going to have you back on, because I don't think our conversation is done.
Okay, so, you got it.
Okay, all right. So that's Suzanne Northrop. Her webpage is theseance.com. Oh, and then we're almost out of time. Next week we have Michael Tellinger. We're talking about the origin of human mankind. If you are into the ancient alien theory, this is a show you cannot miss. Anyway, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Until next week, thank you all for listening. Mark the show as a favorite, and be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to www.justenergyradio.com for more show information and to contact Dr. Rita. Until next time, remember, it's all just energy.